In a modest, sun-drenched bungalow nestled in Brentwood, California, there lived a woman whose name was known by generations, but whose final act of kindness had remained hidden until now. Her name, Betty White. Beloved by millions, Betty wasn't just a TV star or a comedic genius. She was a trailblazer, a pioneer, and above all, a kind soul. To most, her legacy ended when she passed away peacefully just weeks before her 100th birthday. But as fate would have it, one astonishing detail about her final days was only recently uncovered. And what it revealed left even her closest friends in tears. But to understand the depth of this story, you must first know this. Betty White's public life was filled with laughter and light, but privately, she carried an unwavering devotion to a cause close to her heart, one that had nothing to do with fame or fortune. Animals. Dogs, cats, elephants, gorillas. Betty loved them all. Her support for animal welfare spanned over 7 decades. She donated millions. She volunteered her time. She even refused acting roles if the production was linked to animal cruelty. But what happened in the final weeks of her life would become the purest expression of that love. Now here's the part that no one saw coming. After her passing, a sealed letter was found among her personal belongings. A letter that would soon spark headlines and warm hearts across the globe. But what did that letter say? And why is it being called the kindest thing Betty White ever did? Stay tuned. Because what you're about to discover will make you smile, and maybe even shed a tear. The discovery of Betty White's letter wasn't planned. In fact, it almost never came to light. In the weeks following her passing, Betty's longtime assistant and confidant, Kirsten Mickles, was tasked with organizing the late star's personal belongings. Among the books, photo albums, and stacks of handwritten notes was an old wooden box, a keepsake Betty had always kept in her private study. Kirsten almost skipped it, thinking it held nothing more than old scripts and fan letters. But something caught her eye. An envelope marked simply with the words, "To be opened only after my passing." Inside was a letter written in Betty's signature blue ink, her looping script still strong and clear despite her advanced age. And what it contained? It wasn't instructions for her estate. It wasn't a goodbye to friends or family. It was something else entirely. Betty had made arrangements for an extraordinary gift, one that would change the lives of thousands of animals across the country. But before we reveal what that gift was, you should know this. Betty White had quietly amassed a significant fortune over her 7-decade career. Despite her down-to-earth demeanor and simple lifestyle, she was worth an estimated $75 million at the time of her passing. And in her letter, she revealed how she wanted a large portion of that fortune to be used. Kirsten's hands trembled as she read the next lines. "I have made provisions for the creation of a foundation, its sole mission, to provide emergency medical care and sanctuary to elderly and abandoned animals nationwide. I ask that this be done quietly, without fanfare, in honor of the creatures who have brought me such joy throughout my life." The letter included detailed instructions, account numbers, and legal contacts, all prepared well in advance. But why had Betty kept this secret? And how exactly would this foundation work? You won't believe the incredible story that followed. At first, It seemed like Betty White's final wish would be fulfilled without issue. But almost immediately, an obstacle arose, one Betty may have anticipated: bureaucracy. You see, establishing a new foundation is never simple, especially when it involves multi-million-dollar trusts and charitable designations. And in Betty's case, there were additional complications. Her will named several beneficiaries, family members, close friends, and established animal charities. But this new personal foundation was something that few even knew about, and it wasn't formally mentioned in her public estate plan. That's where the trouble began. Within days of the letter's discovery, lawyers representing several distant relatives began questioning its legitimacy. Why wasn't this foundation disclosed earlier? One legal filing asked. Is there proof this letter reflects her true intent? Demanded another. Even more frustrating was the response from certain large animal charities. While some supported the idea, others, perhaps seeing a competitor for future donations, voiced quiet concerns behind closed doors. Betty's pure wish was now tangled in red tape. Kirsten was devastated. She had loved Betty like a mother, and she knew, without a doubt, that this foundation had been one of Betty's deepest desires. But what could she do? How could one assistant fight through corporate interests, skeptical relatives, and endless legal hurdles? And the clock was ticking. Each week that passed meant more animals going without the care this foundation could provide. Yet in those dark moments, Kirsten remembered Betty's words in that letter. If there is resistance, persevere, for kindness must always find a way. That line became Kirsten's mantra. But what happened next? Let's just say it brought an unexpected ally into the fight and changed everything. Word of Betty White's secret letter was never meant to go public, but in today's world, nothing stays private for long. Just 2 weeks after the letter's discovery, a well-meaning employee from one of the involved law firms leaked details to a tabloid. The headline read, "Betty White's hidden letter sparks $10 million foundation battle." Suddenly, the quiet legal process erupted into a full-blown media storm. TV anchors, gossip websites, and social media influencers all jumped on the story. The narrative shifted from a touching act of kindness to a potential scandal. Was Betty White coerced in her final days? Did someone forge her signature? Are greedy relatives trying to stop her final wish? The truth was far simpler, but that didn't matter. Public opinion became a battleground. Some fans passionately defended Betty's intent, while others questioned the timing and secrecy of the letter. And through it all, Kirsten faced mounting pressure. She received anonymous emails, phone calls from journalists demanding statements, even a veiled threat from a distant cousin's lawyer suggesting that if she persisted, her own reputation might be at risk. How can I fight this? She wondered, late one night, staring at the sealed envelope she had now read dozens of times. But Kirsten wasn't alone. Amid the chaos, an unexpected message arrived, one that would turn the tide, an email. From a name she recognized instantly, Tom Sullivan, Betty's dear friend of 50 years and a respected philanthropist in his own right. His message was short but powerful. I know what Betty wanted. Let's make it happen. Call me. What role would Tom play? And could they overcome the growing resistance? The next chapter of this fight would leave everyone watching in awe. When Kirsten dialed Tom Sullivan's number, her hands were trembling. Tom wasn't just a family friend. He was a man with deep connections in both Hollywood and the nonprofit world. More importantly, he had known Betty better than most. "Kirsten," he said warmly when he answered, "I've been expecting your call. Betty told me about the foundation. She trusted you would see it through." Kirsten nearly burst into tears. After weeks of being gaslighted and doubted, here was someone who believed her, someone who knew the truth. Tom didn't waste time. Within 24 hours, he arranged a meeting with a team of powerhouse attorneys and charitable trust experts, all longtime friends of Betty, who were now willing to help. "The media wants a scandal," Tom told the group, "but we're going to give them a story of hope instead." Their strategy? Prove the letter's authenticity beyond any doubt, and establish that the foundation was fully in line with Betty's long-expressed values. Tom provided crucial evidence: dozens of personal emails, handwritten notes, and video recordings of Betty discussing her dream of creating a sanctuary for senior animals. "I don't want them to be forgotten," Betty had said in one video, filmed just months before her passing. "They gave us love. We owe them peace." Armed with this material, Tom and Kirsten prepared to face the next legal hearing. A hearing that would determine whether the foundation could proceed. But behind the scenes, opposition remained fierce. Certain parties filed new injunctions. The media frenzy escalated. Even some so-called fans began spreading conspiracy theories online. "We need to hold steady," Tom reminded Kirsten. "Remember what Betty always said, kindness must always find a way." But was kindness enough to win this battle? The answer was coming, and it would stun even the harshest critics. As the court date approached, tensions reached a boiling point. Kirsten and Tom faced a wall of opposition. Two distant cousins were now fully contesting the foundation. An unnamed celebrity donor publicly questioned the letter's legitimacy on social media. Several animal charities, fearing a shift in funding, lobbied quietly against it. The legal filings became increasingly personal. One document even insinuated that Kirsten had manipulated Betty in her final days, an accusation that cut her to the core. "How could they think that?" she asked Tom, tears welling up. "Because they don't know Betty like we do," Tom replied. "But soon they will." Meanwhile, the public was growing restless. Honor Betty's Wish began trending on social media, with countless fans posting photos of their rescued pets alongside tributes to Betty White. But for every supporter, a new skeptic emerged, fueling the controversy. What happened next? Many asked. Would Betty's wish be honored or buried under legal wrangling? Amid the turmoil, a breakthrough came. Tom uncovered a video message Betty had recorded for her 100th birthday tribute, a message that had never been aired. In it, Betty said, "If you're watching this, I hope you'll consider helping the animals who need us most, especially the older ones who are too often overlooked. It's my dream to see them safe and loved." There it was, clear public evidence of her intent. But would the judge accept it? Could this be enough to overcome the growing opposition? And as the courtroom filled on the morning of the hearing, no one, not even Kirsten, was prepared for the twist that was about to unfold. Because someone unexpected was about to walk through those courtroom doors. The morning of the court hearing was tense. Kirsten sat beside Tom at the plaintiff's table, clutching Betty's letter and the newly discovered video message. The opposing attorneys arrived in sharp suits, armed with binders of objections and legal jargon. Spectators filled the gallery, fans, journalists, even a few Hollywood insiders. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. Will the judge even consider our new evidence? Kirsten whispered. We'll know soon, Tom replied. Just be ready. Then, just as the proceedings were about to begin, the courtroom doors swung open. In walked a silver-haired woman in a crisp navy suit, flanked by two aides. A murmur swept through the room. It was Dr. Jane Goodall, world-renowned primatologist and lifelong friend of Betty White. What is she doing here? One reporter whispered. She's going to testify, another guessed, wide-eyed. Indeed, Jane Goodall had flown in from the UK upon hearing of the legal battle. Taking the stand as a surprise witness, Jane spoke softly but firmly. I corresponded with Betty White for over 30 years, she began. Her love for animals wasn't a celebrity cause. It was her life's mission. We discussed this very foundation many times. Betty told me it was her greatest wish that it be created after her passing to help those who could not help themselves. The room fell silent. Jane then held up a stack of handwritten letters, personal notes Betty had sent her, mentioning the foundation repeatedly. This was no afterthought. This was Betty's heart. Even the most cynical attorneys seemed momentarily stunned. But would this emotional testimony sway the judge? And what final piece of evidence was about to surface? One that would seal the fate of Betty's final wish. The next moment would leave everyone breathless. The atmosphere in the courtroom was electric after Dr. Jane Goodall's testimony. Even the judge, known for his stoic demeanor, leaned forward slightly, a rare show of emotion. But Tom and Kirsten knew they had one more card to play. One final piece of undeniable proof that would leave no room for doubt. Your Honor, Tom said, standing calmly. With your permission, we would like to present a video recorded by Miss White herself, just weeks before her passing. The judge nodded. A small screen was wheeled into the room. As the lights dimmed, the room fell into a reverent hush. Then, Betty's familiar, warm voice filled the courtroom. Hello, dear friends, she began, her radiant smile lighting up the screen despite her frailty. If you're seeing this, it means I've moved on to join my beloved friends, both furry and human, on the other side. The room was silent. I want to share something very close to my heart. For many years, I dreamed of creating a place where senior and abandoned animals could find love, dignity, and care in their final days. A sanctuary, one that would outlive me and continue this mission long after I'm gone. Tears streamed down Kirsten's face. I have made the necessary provisions to bring this dream to life. It is my deepest wish that those handling my estate will honor this request. Not for me, but for them. Our silent friends who give us so much and ask for so little. As the video ended, there wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. Even one of the opposing attorneys lowered their gaze, visibly moved. The judge cleared his throat. Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. I will review this carefully. But what would his ruling be? And could kindness truly overcome the lingering forces of greed and doubt? The answer was coming, sooner than anyone expected. The air in the courtroom remained heavy as the lights came back on. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the judge leaned forward, adjusting his glasses. "This court has reviewed substantial new evidence," he began, his voice measured but firm, "including the testimony of Dr. Goodall and the video message recorded by Miss White herself." The distant relative's attorneys shuffled uncomfortably. The media section of the courtroom was eerily silent, cameras poised. "It is abundantly clear," the judge continued, "that the creation of this foundation was not only consistent with Miss White's lifelong values, but explicitly documented as her final wish." A pause. "Therefore, I hereby rule that the letter shall be recognized as a valid expression of intent. The court orders that the designated funds be released for the establishment of the Betty White Animal Sanctuary and Medical Relief Foundation." The room erupted, not in cheers, but in quiet, respectful applause. Tears streamed down Kirsten's cheeks. Tom squeezed her shoulder gently. Across the aisle, the once defiant relatives looked stunned. Even one of their attorneys nodded slightly in resignation. The judge wasn't finished. "Furthermore," he said, "let this record show that in honoring this foundation, we are honoring not only the letter of the law, but the spirit of kindness and compassion that Betty White embodied throughout her remarkable life." The courtroom was still, the words hanging in the air like a blessing. "What happens next?" a reporter whispered. "When will the foundation launch?" The truth was, Betty's work was only beginning, because the coming weeks would bring even more surprises, and one more act of kindness that no one saw coming. The judge's ruling sent a powerful message, not just to the courtroom, but to the world. News outlets quickly picked up the story. Betty White's secret foundation approved. Kindness wins. Final wish of America's golden girl comes true. But what happened next truly captured hearts everywhere. Kirsten and Tom, now officially named co-trustees of the newly formed Betty White Animal Sanctuary and Medical Relief Foundation, began working tirelessly to bring Betty's vision to life. They expected to start small, perhaps a modest facility in California. But then the donations began pouring in. Moved by the story, fans around the world launched grassroots campaigns. Celebrities, some of whom had never even met Betty, pledged support. $5, $10, $50,000, $1 million. Donations flooded in from every corner of the globe. And then came the final, astonishing twist. Among the messages was a private letter from an anonymous donor, someone very close to Betty during her career. Enclosed was a personal check for $10 million, matching Betty's original endowment. The note read simply, "She gave us all so much joy. It's the least I can do to honor her." With this gift, Betty's dream would far surpass expectations. The foundation announced plans to open 3 full-service animal sanctuaries in Los Angeles, Chicago, and Atlanta, each offering not only safe havens for senior animals, but also subsidized medical care for rescue organizations nationwide. This was Betty's greatest wish, Kirsten told reporters, not for fame or legacy, but for love, for the animals. And as the first animals arrived at the sanctuary's temporary facility weeks later, elderly dogs wagging their tails, frail cats purring in warm beds, Kirsten could almost hear Betty's voice. Kindness must always find a way. And indeed, it had. Weeks turned into months, and the world watched as Betty White's final wish blossomed into a living legacy. The first official facility of the Betty White Animal Sanctuary and Medical Relief Foundation opened its doors to the public with a heartwarming ceremony. Kirsten stood at the entrance, welcoming guests and volunteers. Beside her was Tom Sullivan, whose steadfast friendship and determination had helped bring Betty's dream to life. A large banner hung above the entrance. In memory of Betty White, a friend to all creatures. Reporters gathered to document the event. Yet this was not a flashy Hollywood gala. There were no red carpets, no designer gowns, just happy tears, wagging tails, and the sound of soft paws on newly polished floors. Elderly dogs, once abandoned, now curled up on plush beds. Senior cats, often overlooked in shelters, purred contentedly in sun-drenched playrooms. A dedicated veterinary wing provided free emergency care to rescues and low-income pet owners. "This is exactly what Betty wanted," Kirsten told the cameras, her voice thick with emotion. "A place where kindness triumphs, where love is the legacy." The foundation also launched a grant program for animal welfare organizations nationwide, ensuring that Betty's impact would reach far beyond the sanctuary walls. And in an even more poetic gesture, the first sanctuary opened on what would have been Betty White's 100th birthday, a fitting tribute to a woman who gave the world so much joy. Across social media, the response was overwhelming. Betty would be so proud. Kindness won today. She's still changing the world. Indeed, Betty's final gift had not only helped countless animals, it had reminded millions of the simple, powerful truth: kindness matters. And as Kirsten watched a frail greyhound find its forever home that day, she whispered quietly, "We did it, Betty. We did it." As the sun set over the Betty White Animal Sanctuary, its soft golden light streamed through the windows, warming the rooms where elderly animals now slept in comfort, safe, loved, and cherished. Betty White's final secret had become a living legacy, and the world had watched as kindness triumphed over cynicism, bureaucracy, and doubt. But beyond the headlines and the social media buzz, this story carries a deeper lesson, one that Betty herself lived every single day. Kindness is not an act of convenience, it's a choice, one we must make again and again, no matter the obstacles. Betty didn't set out to be remembered for this gift. She never sought praise or glory. In fact, her letter made it clear. She wanted no fanfare, only action. And in doing so, she gave us all a final gift. A reminder that even in a world filled with noise and division, one person's quiet compassion can ripple out and change countless lives. If this story moved you, Kirsten later told a crowd at the foundation's dedication, please carry Betty's spirit forward, be kind, help those who cannot help themselves, human or animal alike. So today, let us honor that wish. If Betty's story touched your heart, consider supporting your local shelter. Volunteer your time. Adopt an overlooked pet. or simply choose kindness in your daily life. And if you'd like to help continue Betty's legacy, visit the Foundation's website to learn how you can get involved. Because the world needs more kindness. And as Betty White showed us, kindness always finds a way.